What I saw startled me. I spent a bit more time refining my new daily cash model, then called Alan, my PE sponsor, in New York. Alan, I said, it looks to me like we're burning cash. Impossible, he says. That company has never had a cash issue. I sent him my findings. At this rate, we'd be blowing through bank covenants in just a few months. We were measuring many KPIs, yet we failed to predict and prevent this critical event. In the next few minutes, I'll show you what we missed and what a chance dinner conversation with one of the greatest CEOs in American business history taught me to never miss again. Hi, I'm Phil Coerper, Managing Director of Ringling Business Solutions. In this episode of the CEO's Field Manual, we'll look at metrics, the processes, and what's useful and what's ineffective around these. What is the specific metric and metric structure that doesn't work well and why? What metrics and structures drive results and why is that? At the end of this episode, you'll have the tools to assess how your metrics processes are working, you'll have concrete steps to improve them, and you can refocus your leadership team on a finite set of data that drives business results and decision making. Finally, we'll cover how evolving AI tools can help you see future business conditions early so you can take proactive action like never before. Now, a known adage is if everything is a priority, then nothing is. A second known adage is you improve on what you measure. I think it's wise to combine these on the topic of metrics and data, resulting in measure what matters and what drives decision making. Expanding on the first adage, if everything is a priority, nothing is, here's a real-life story of a larger company's ineffective use of KPIs. Now, my working difference between metrics and KPIs is KPIs have tended to have target ranges for the data, so we're tracking if the data point is in a healthy range or not. Now, I was working on the business unit manager level for a large company with many departments, business units, and entities. Each month, we would all produce our KPIs. Then the KPIs would be combined in the monthly digital metrics book with corporate finance adding a combined summary. If printed, the book was massive, often over 250 pages. Now, it took each area days and sometimes over a week to update their monthly KPIs. It then took about a week for the corporate team to combine and publish the results. So by the time you read and absorbed last month's results, you are over halfway into the current month and days away from starting the whole thing over again. The result, we had metrics on almost everything, and yet few proactive actions were taken from the information. By the time the problem was large enough to get attention, it was already impacting the financial results or our customers. A few issues combine to make this process ineffective. First, if you attempt to measure and analyze everything, nothing gets priority treatment. Just like past episodes where we discussed less is more in IT investment, I believe less is also more on KPIs. The operative question I learned to ask is, does this move the bar? More granular on this is, does a move in this metric or KPI cause a decision and an action? Asking these two questions will get your KPIs focused on business results and away from measure just to measure. The second is the timing issue here. This timing issue is a fundamental flaw in many KPIs, and specifically when using results from the monthly financial close as action-driven KPIs. Even if you can close the books quickly, the leadership team is getting results for last month well into the next. Now, some things require a close to reveal accurate results, but many do not or don't have to. I found that my most valuable metrics are produced daily or weekly. We then build out a rate of change trend model for predictive power. More on that in a minute. Also, even for data sets that can't be produced daily, the underlying drivers likely can. The other observation at the time was a question. Brian, a peer business unit manager of mine, asked often when we crossed paths during what we ended up calling KPI week. Does anything ever get taken off the KPI list? Brian opined. We had yet to see one. This book was the Hotel California of KPIs. Ken was also listening and said, I'll just not check in. Brian said rhetorically, maybe I'll just submit last month's KPIs and see if anyone notices. Never moving on from a KPI led to a perversion of the whole darn system. Managers also had their own KPIs that they thought were important, but they chose not to publish so it did not have, the half-life of uranium. If this story even has a hint of similarity to your process, please stop. Drowning the team in stale data is not a robust KPI process. It's an ineffective one. Later in my career, I ended up developing a tiered data process. First tier, KPIs, few, focused, and impactful. The second tier, common metrics, worthwhile to have, current, and available as reference data sets. The first tier was our daily bread. The second was a heavily automated reference report. Another example, a PE firm that sponsored a company I led had a similar virus as the large company in the first story. They wanted a full day of management review every single month. To do well in the review, you had to develop a robust deck of data-driven metrics. The monthly review typically took place in the second week of the following month. Now, admittedly, this was better than just publishing a KPI book. We discussed each deck page of all departments, programs, metrics with the full leadership team and the PE sponsors. Sitting in the all-day review, Bill, our operations manager, was presenting. We need a plan on labor efficiency, Alan, the PE sponsor, said. And what about scrap? What's your goal, and how will we get there? All great questions. We came out of the daily review with robust action plans. In the end, we made progress, but it was ineffective in driving major business outcomes overall. We often fail to highlight the top few things that drove improvement, and then focus the entire team on improving in those areas in the next period. In the end, it turned into more activity than results. The first adage, you improve what you measure, can easily add more and more things measured as time goes on until the if everything is a priority, nothing is, dilutes the whole effort. Those early experiences with ineffective KPIs drove many actions I took throughout my CEO career. The challenge question I learned to ask was, what action are we taking because of these data sets or KPIs? Is this just good information to know, or is it driving change? Many common KPIs fail this test. And there's a key connector here. Ask your team, if this KPI gets out of the target range, what steps are in our toolbox to bring it back into range? Then ask the follow-up question, and this changes the air in the room. Okay, why not take those actions now anyways? Now we're getting somewhere. Maximizing any single KPI will not optimize the business. In fact, steps taken to fix one thing, let's say gross margin, may have other outcomes elsewhere, like on sales growth or inventory turns or ability to manage fluctuations in volume. Your critical metrics must be connected to your critical business levers. What signals us to action? The metrics and the KPIs. What drives business success? Action levers. If you take one thing away from this episode, make it this. Have specific clarity on both key metrics and key levers in your business. What are the measured inputs, metrics, that provide us with the signals for action? What are the levers we can pull to change outcomes? Work on these two areas in every meeting, offsite, and business review. Test, refine it, and optimize it. It's your guide to winning in your specific business in good times and challenging times as well. So, okay, Phil, great theory, good stories. Let's get down to brass tacks. What KPIs should I be using to optimize my business? The specific KPIs for you have dependencies on your business model, status, and goals. They have to be related to that. But the attributes and structure are definable regardless. Use these rules and your KPI program will be world-class regardless of situation, market size, or industry. The first step, answer this question. What 5 numbers would I improve if I had unlimited power to do so? Then answer this follow-up question. What drives changes in those values? This follow-up is the most important and may need to be asked several more times, like the power of asking why 7 times. You now have the makings of your key metrics and levers. Test these every chance you get. Virtually every company will include sales growth as an answer to the first question. But what actually drives sales growth in your business? The more brutally honest you are on the follow-up question, the more you'll be focused on what actually drives results and what levers you can actually pull. Then take a big step back. What are we currently measuring? Not just on the corporate level, but across the company in all the departments. The test should be, if this metric gets out of range, will we or have we acted? If not, is it a metric issue or a lever issue? A tight metric connected to an actionable lever is a must-have on winning KPIs. Now put your 2-tiered structure in place on KPIs and reference data. I need to focus on the finite things that drive success, but also can't be so laser focused on a few things that we miss large events. The answer here is to focus on a few critical drivers in the now, be aware of data trends in the next, and be strategically creative on the things that may come down the road. Hard to do? Well, welcome to the C-suite. Most importantly, be willing to be dynamic here. Things change, so good to know metric can suddenly be a critical KPI or the other way around. If you lead a seasonal business, are adding an acquisition, or entering new markets, be as dynamic and flexible as you can. This is very important to always having the right information being used correctly. Be sure your KPIs are not living in the Hotel California, by the way. Back to the opening story. I'm a new CEO in a company that never had cash flow issues, and now we have them. What happened? And more importantly, how do we learn from the miss? 2 things here. When I joined, we did not measure daily cash flow, but relied on the cash flow statement at the monthly close. Secondly, the company was focused on EBITDA. On the first point, several years earlier, I had the opportunity to attend a small dinner with Louis Gerstner Jr., who wrote the book, Who Says Elephants Can't Dance, from his time as CEO of IBM. The dinner was the night before Lou was speaking at an event we were sponsoring, and was an intimate gathering of 6 executives at a steakhouse in upstate New York. Lou was amazing and personally engaging with all of us. He told us what it was like to be the first non-tech CEO at IBM. They thought I was going to crash and burn, he said. How can a non-IT person know what it takes to win here? He ended up basically saving IBM during his time there. And this perspective gave me confidence. I did not have to be from the market segment to be qualified as a leader in that segment. Business fundamentals work everywhere. Lou told the story in his book and at dinner how in the first days at IBM he asked for daily cash flow reports. This was one of his daily bread items he was always used to relying on. Just like my PE sponsor, the financial team said, Lou, we're IBM, we have plenty of cash. He insisted on having his daily cash report on his desk each morning and found quickly that IBM was hemorrhaging cash. If critical steps were not taken, they would soon be insolvent. After that dinner, I was always focused on daily cash in and out and the trends it represented. Thanks, Lou. In my first days as a CEO in this company, your insight saved the day. Now let's discuss the metric of EBITDA. First, some definitions. If you know these, you can jump through them. Net income is the true bottom line. It's the value brought from the income statement to the balance sheet and cash flow statement, showing what the business earned that period. One would think that would be the end of the conversation. But not so fast. Earnings before interest and taxes, EBIT, is the more used definition for the bottom line. The thought here is interest and taxes are not truly under the control of the leadership team. Not necessarily valid, but an argument. The addition of depreciation and amortization to EBIT get us to EBITDA. And this is meant to reflect the cash flows of the business. And they theoretically do. Now, this is a standard way to value the worth of a company by applying a multiple to the cash flows of the business. This is why EBITDA is used broadly as both an incentive metric for leadership teams and a valuation metric for M&A. So far, so good. Now here's the rub and why EBITDA is shunned by many, especially family-owned companies. CapEx investment, a key driver to the D, or acquisition of intangible assets, a key driver to the A, can be modest earning impacts for a given period, but they have immediate cash flow impacts and over time increasing impact on earnings. The theory on CapEx is the ROI from reinvesting in the business will more than pay for the depreciation as it comes due. But either way, near-term cash impacts from larger projects can be straining to the business. So if you allow aggressive CapEx spending, you may look like you're making great money on the income statement, but you also may be burning cash faster than you think. Using EBITDA for measuring business performance is ripe with issues if CapEx and intangible acquisition values are not closely monitored, managed, and understood. In the story at the beginning of this episode, the EBITDA looked pretty good, even though the short-term cash position was a growing problem. And a cash trends analysis was seen as unnecessary as the company had a long-term track record of great cash positions. Another key point, cash flow issues don't always just show up in hard times. As a matter of fact, they can be even more sudden and impactful in growth cycles. You have high incoming orders that need to be fulfilled before the AR gets mature. This creates a period of tight cash if you're not prepared for it. And if you have high CapEx spending in a high growth period, it's not uncommon to be surprised at how fast cash issues come to your doorstep. Net income, EBIT, EBITDA are all useful financial metrics and widely used. But be cautious, they don't always show prosperity, especially in a short horizon. A final look at how AI is quickly changing the options for metrics and KPIs. In the stories in this episode, we are balancing the amount of effort with the value of the outputs from metric and KPI programs. AI is quickly changing this calculus. I mentioned rate of change analysis earlier. This is a technique that looks at the velocity of change in addition to the magnitude. Think of it this way. My business sales are up 10% this year over last. Sounds pretty good. But in a rate of change model, the growth rate is actually slowing in the last several months compared to the same period last year. Your rate of change is slowing. If you are just looking at the 10%, you're thinking you're on track. However, if you're seeing the rate of growth slow down, you have a canary in the coal mine here and can be proactive because this slowdown is coming for your 10% in the coming periods. Now here's what AI adds, amazing power. This is a predictive metric. The reason so few use it is because it's heavy data and labor intensive. Perfect for your AI agents to tackle. If you take a second most important takeaway here, use AI to take rate of change data and produce predictive outcomes that you can action proactively. This can be done in any size company in this day and age. Now let's hit 5 key rules to great metrics that you can implement for success. First, less is more. Is your team measuring what matters and what drives action? Are your metrics and levers working together and optimized? Develop a tiered system where you have the daily bread inputs that truly drive results and then reference data sets available and automated. Second, be dynamic, no Hotel California syndrome. Avoid legacy metrics whenever possible, and challenge if you are measuring the right things and if a change in those values drives action. Just because something is important today does not mean it will be important tomorrow. Even a tweak in how you measure something can open up many options for action. I'm constantly tweaking my daily cash reports, but I'll always have one on my desk each morning. So be creative and dynamic here. It will pay huge dividends. Third, one single KPI does not tell the story. So combine key metrics into a strong outcome-based story. One of the challenges to business success is that we need to drive action in many lanes to win. This relates to your KPIs as well. So I say invest time on the best combination of data outcomes that drive business success. Just a thought experiment with your team on the topic will deliver some great strategic ideas. Fourth, daily or weekly data with rate of change analysis wins. Are your key metrics and KPIs telling you what happened or what's coming? If it's the former, you're driving the car, looking out the rearview mirror. Finally, leverage AI-based depth, exception analysis, and predictive models. AI is not just a transformation, it's a revolution in this area. The baby became a toddler in 2024 and 25. The toddler grew up to be a young adolescent in 26. Next come the teenage years, though. Buckle up. There's going to be rebellion and friction in the AI in the near future. Even with that, those that lean in win. Those that resist or resent fall behind. In the case of predictive business models, lean in and lean in now. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the CEO's Field Manual. In our next episode, we'll cover the culture of productive conflict. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Please subscribe, and we'll see you at a future video.